Disaster? Yes, and it all began with a single sentence. Honestly, I never imagined one seemingly harmless comment could push my marriage to the edge of collapse. I simply told my husband to step aside and let the real men handle the grilling. That's all I said. But that remark triggered something in him, something deep, and he reacted in a way I could have never predicted. Let me take a step back and introduce myself. I'm Mile, a 28-year-old event planner. 2 years ago, I married my closest friend, someone I had known and trusted deeply. His name is Kevin, and he's 30. From the very first time we met, about 5 years ago, we clicked instantly. There was no awkward phase. Our friendship felt effortless, genuine, and filled with laughter. Kevin and I were inseparable. I never once thought our bond would lead to romance. It was too good, too pure, just the way it was. And strangely enough, I think he felt the same. Through heartbreaks and struggles, through every late-night phone call and inside joke, we supported one another like no one else could. Our connection was so natural that everyone around us began to speculate. Friends, family, co-workers. They all believed we were made for something more. Eventually, they started to encourage us, nudging us toward the idea of dating. At the time, I was still in a relationship, and Kevin had just come out of a long-term one, so we weren't exactly looking. But as months passed and both of us found ourselves single again, something shifted. Nothing had ever happened between us, no kisses, no flirtation. But our inner circle began scheming little setups, arranging dinners for just the two of us, disappearing to give us privacy, planting ideas in our heads. Looking back, I sometimes wonder, if no one had interfered, would we have ever crossed that line? Looking back now, it's almost unbelievable how subtle things turned into something so irreversible. Friends and family, thinking they were helping, began crafting little moments for Kevin and me, setting us up on casual dinner plans, conveniently leaving the two of us alone at restaurants by accident. At first, it felt harmless. After all, we'd always been surrounded by a group. But as these setups became more frequent, the intimacy became harder to ignore. We tried to resist. Truly, we did. But when everyone around you starts insisting you'd make the perfect couple, that pressure starts to weigh on you. It's easy to let your guard down when the entire world seems to cheer for your love story, even if your heart hasn't caught up yet. It's funny, isn't it? We like to pretend our choices are entirely our own. But the truth is, many of our life-changing decisions are shaped by the expectations of others. That's exactly what happened to Kevin and me. We crossed a line that, in hindsight, we probably never should have. And yes, I say that knowing how strange it sounds. You'd expect the story of two best friends falling in love to be a dream. But in our case, it ended up breaking what was once beautiful. Not every deep friendship is meant to evolve into romance. Some connections are at their best when left untouched. And once that boundary is crossed, it's hard, if not impossible, to go back. Within months, we were going on dates, holding hands, sharing kisses. And before I could even fully process it, he proposed. Just 6 months into the relationship. I said yes. How could I not? Everyone was so sure of us. We were the perfect match. But perfection, I've learned, can be an illusion. If you're wondering whether there were red flags, we didn't think so. That's the dangerous thing about love. The warning signs often wear green until it's too late. What looked like compatibility was really familiarity. What felt like security was really comfort in routine. And I'll admit something I've never said out loud before. I didn't love Kevin, not romantically. Yes, I loved him, as a friend, as someone I trusted deeply. But as a life partner? As someone to wake up next to for the rest of my life? I wasn't ready. And maybe I never would have been. Our marriage was rushed, built on history, not vision. We didn't fight. There was no betrayal. But once the rings were on, the reality hit us like a tidal wave. Suddenly, we were two people trying to build a future we'd never actually talked about. We hadn't discussed kids. We hadn't aligned our goals. Everything important was left unspoken until it was too late. I started noticing things that had never bothered me before, like how overly friendly Kevil was with other women. I told him it made me uncomfortable, but he brushed it off. I'm not a jealous person, but I do have boundaries. He didn't respect them. Then came the bigger issue, money. I've always considered myself a soft life kind of woman. I love the finer things, luxury handbags, spontaneous getaways, designer shoes. Kevil earned significantly more than I did as a banker, but I started to realize it wasn't enough, not for the life I pictured. He could afford stability, sure, but not extravagance. Not the kind of wealth that makes luxury feel effortless. When we were just friends, I didn't care about his income. But as his wife, I began resenting that he couldn't meet the lifestyle I dreamed of. I wanted a man who could say yes without hesitation when I asked for something lavish. Kevil, on the other hand, wanted to budget for hypothetical children I didn't even want. That clash between his practicality and my desire to live boldly created a rift we couldn't bridge. When we were just friends, Kevil would give me gifts now and then, and I appreciated it, but I never really thought twice about his finances. It didn't matter. But after we got married, reality began to settle in. Yes, Kevil was well off enough to own a decent car and live in a comfortable home, but not wealthy enough to fund the kind of lifestyle I had always envisioned for myself. He wasn't the type of man who could casually book luxury vacations multiple times a year or surprise me with a new designer handbag just because I mentioned it in passing. And while he made good money, more than me, in fact, it simply wasn't enough to meet the standard I dreamed of. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Kevil was poor. Not at all. But there's a difference between being financially stable and being lavishly rich. I wanted the latter. I wanted to be able to walk into any store and buy what I wanted without flinching at the price tag. I wanted monthly allowances. I wanted Birkin bags without needing to justify them. With Kevil, those dreams felt completely out of reach. From a young age, I had this vision of marrying a man who was filthy rich, not just well-paid, but extravagant. It wasn't a shallow fantasy for me, it was a part of the life I pictured for myself. But the marriage happened so fast, and I never gave myself time to realize that Kevil didn't fit that dream. Worse yet, he was obsessed with saving. Constantly planning for a future that, to me, didn't even exist yet. Once, he received a generous bonus at work, and I thought, finally, a chance to indulge a little. I asked him for money to go shopping, nothing outrageous, just a fair amount. But he only gave me half of what I requested, telling me we needed to be smart and save. His reasoning? We don't know if more bonuses will come, and you already have plenty of clothes. That irritated me beyond belief. And when I asked what exactly he was saving for, he brought up children's education and long-term goals. Children? I didn't even want kids, not then, maybe not ever. Yet there he was, planning for them like they were already here, while I felt like my own needs were constantly dismissed. Yes, Kevil still did the basics. He took me out to nice dinners, bought gifts occasionally, and tried to make me feel cared for. But I didn't want occasional. I wanted ease, abundance, freedom. I wanted to live a life where, if I woke up and decided to stop working, nothing would change. But with Kevil, I knew that was never going to happen. The more time passed, the more obvious it became. We weren't aligned in our values or our vision of life. He was cautious, measured, always thinking 10 steps ahead. I was impulsive, expressive, and lived for the moment. Our personalities clashed in every decision, every conversation. And strangely, for all the memories we built as best friends, our marriage lacked the excitement that friendship once had. I started to feel the void long before I was ready to admit it. The excitement was gone. That electric feeling that made relationships feel alive? Nowhere to be found. And slowly, regret crept in. I began questioning everything, especially Kevil's obsession with budgeting and long-term planning. To me, there was nothing appealing about a man who weighed every dollar like it was a life-or-death decision. I crave someone bold enough to make lavish choices without blinking and still have money left over. Kevil wasn't that kind of man. And the more I realized it, the more I questioned why I said yes in the first place. Our friendship, the foundation of it all, had vanished. What once felt easy now felt heavy and tense. But what frustrated me more than the fading connection was how Kevil started shifting the blame onto me, as if I alone had steered the ship off course. Eventually, he suggested we have a serious talk. He wanted us to lay everything out, face the issues, and see what could be salvaged. I hesitated. I hate confrontation, especially when I already know what's coming. I just knew he'd use that opportunity to bring up how irrational I'd been with my expectations. I wanted to run from the conversation, but Kevil insisted. He said we couldn't keep pretending. So I agreed to meet. He started the conversation calmly but firmly. One of the first things he said was, "Our friendship hasn't just faded, it's been damaged. I thought marriage would strengthen us. I was wrong." Those words hit me like a punch to the chest. I wasn't ready for how much they'd hurt. Then he asked me to explain what had changed, why I'd become so distant, so cold. I didn't hold back. I told him that I hated how he prioritized saving over simply saying yes to me. That he disregarded things I cared about, going out, socializing, enjoying luxury. I needed to feel seen and valued, and I didn't. But when it was his turn to speak, that's when things got harder to swallow. Kevil told me, bluntly, that I constantly asked for things that were excessive, items that cost thousands of dollars for no practical reason. He said I was focused on temporary satisfaction and didn't have any true vision for our future. That I was more committed to trends than to partnership. Then he said the one thing I still can't forget. "You only think about what you want right now. I've always tried to include you in my plans for the future, for us, but you never once included me in yours." He didn't stop there. He accused me of lacking emotional awareness, of being selfish. That I'd changed as soon as he started saying no to my demands. His words cut deeper than I expected. I sat there feeling attacked, exposed, even humiliated. It felt like the entire talk had been set up just to throw everything wrong with me into my face. I couldn't believe he would say those things to me, after everything we'd shared. And the worst part? I didn't agree with a single word. Not one. In my eyes, he was trying to cover up his financial limitations by making me the villain. I called him out on it. I told him I wouldn't sit there and be labeled as the problem. So, I stood up to leave. Kevil's tone shifted the moment I turned to leave. "This is exactly what you always do," he snapped. "You list out everything you hate about me, and the moment I do the same, you storm off. We're supposed to be figuring this out together, not running away." His words only fueled my frustration. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to be accused, again, of being the problem. So I left. No apology. No second thought. For almost a week, I ignored every attempt he made to reach out. Calls, texts, even emails, I left them unanswered. I couldn't stand the idea of being labeled selfish when I truly didn't believe I was. Eventually, he stopped trying. And even when we did start speaking again, the air between us was heavy. Our conversations became short, forced, awkward. It was clear something had broken, and we weren't patching it anytime soon. I waited for an apology. Part of me needed it. I felt like he owed me one for the things he said, but it never came. And the longer the silence lasted, the deeper the resentment grew. Eventually, our friends and family began noticing the distance. The tension was too thick to hide. That's when my friends suggested a short getaway, a 5-day retreat with our close-knit group. Deep down, I knew the trip was more about fixing us than anything else. But I didn't argue. I couldn't handle the whispers or the pity. Especially not when some of the other women in our group were married to wealthy, high-rolling men who flaunted their success like badges of honor. In comparison, I felt like I had drawn the short straw. It sounds shallow, I know. But when you're surrounded by designer handbags and husbands who drop thousands like pocket change, it's hard not to notice what you're missing. I didn't want to be seen as the one who settled. So I went. Keval did too. For the first 3 days, we kept it together. Smiles, polite conversations, a few jokes. We played the part of a normal couple well. But on the last day, during a casual barbecue, everything unraveled. The guys had started a friendly grilling competition. Just for fun, really. To my surprise, Keval jumped in, even bragged about how he'd win. And for some reason, that embarrassed me. Maybe I didn't want him to fail in front of the others. Or maybe I just assumed the other men, the richer, more experienced ones, were better at everything, even grilling. So I made a stupid comment. A joke, really. I looked at Keval and said, "Why don't you sit this one out and let the real men handle the grill?" I said it casually, quietly. I meant it as a nudge for him to step back, not as an insult. But the moment I saw his face, I knew I had crossed a line. His expression turned cold, then furious. Everything stopped. Everyone stared. And then he said it right in front of everyone. "This is exactly why I'm filing for divorce. You're the worst kind of wife. I regret ever proposing to you." He walked off. Just like that. I stood there frozen. The silence that followed felt deafening. Eyes were on me, judging, questioning. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. But it didn't. Instead, people drifted away one by one, leaving me alone with the weight of what had just happened. When I got back to our room, Keval was gone. No note. No explanation. Just gone. I couldn't face another awkward morning, so I left early and went straight to my parents' house. Later that day, I found out he had blocked me on everything: social media, messages, even email. I was stunned. Then came the real shock. For weeks later, he had the divorce papers delivered to my parents' home. It was over. I tried everything. I begged. My parents begged. Friends called him. But he was firm. He said our marriage drained him, that I was too self-absorbed to build a life with, that I had no space for compromise. And now here I am with nothing but memories. I lost my husband, and I lost my best friend. So I have to ask, was it me? Did I bring all of this on myself? Am I the reason for my own heartbreak? Maybe love isn't always enough. Maybe friendship doesn't always translate into forever. And maybe, just maybe, we don't always realize what we have until it slips through our fingers. I look back now and wonder what could have been different. If I had appreciated him more. If I had listened instead of reacted. If I had chosen partnership over pride. But regrets don't change the past. They only echo in the silence that follows. What I know for sure is this: I lost more than a marriage. I lost someone who once knew me better than anyone else. And no matter how the world sees me now, spoiled, selfish, misunderstood, I see a woman who made mistakes, but who is still learning how to love without conditions. Sometimes, the hardest truth is realizing you were the one who lit the match. But it's also the first step to healing from the fire.